Hello! One of the more common questions we see on the Sploot app is around food allergies in dogs. अगर आपने अपने डॉग में कोई ऐसी एलर्जी या सिम्टम देखा है, skin rashes, diarrhea, excessive hair fall, etc., 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 your dog could be suffering from a food allergy. We spoke to Surabhi, who's a canine nutritionist, who explained to us everything you need to know about food allergies.
What I wanted to start with is actually first, I think, bringing about a little bit of distinction between food allergies and food intolerances, because often these are used quite interchangeably, but they're actually not the same thing, right? So when we talk about food intolerance, the most important thing is that it only affects the digestive system, right? And it might present itself with one or two other symptoms, but largely what you're going to see is, you're going to see diarrhea, you could see a little bit of vomiting, right? And so you could eat small bits of this offending food. You may be able to prevent a reaction. It could be that your body is missing a certain enzyme to break down the food. Another chronic condition might sort of elicit this reaction towards a certain kind of food. But usually, for example, if your dog is eaten, let's say a little bit of a different protein type, right, and immediately has, very mucousy poop or has diarrhea, I think a lot of times people assume that that's an allergy, but it could just be food intolerance, right? And so I think one of the best examples is actually with milk products, right? We know that dogs are lactose intolerant, which means that they don't have the necessary enzymes to break down lactose as a compound in their body. But a lot of dogs can still consume dairy and fermented milk products, right? Without necessarily having a very strong reaction to their body, right? So some dogs, again, might, if they consume a little bit too much of dairy, they might end up having loose poop, they might end up throwing up a little bit, but other than that, they pretty much are able to sort of consume and hold down that food, right? And so that really is an example of food intolerance, right? It is much more short term. It's very immediate to an offending food that you might be eating. And so I think it's important to keep in mind that a food intolerance could lead to an upset stomach, but that may not necessarily be a food allergy. Yeah. Okay. With food allergies, they essentially impact the immune system, right? And in a lot of cases, they could be really life-threatening. So again, if you look at the human context, you'll have people who, for example, are extremely allergic to peanuts, right? They go into anaphylactic shock. You have individuals who are extremely allergic to strawberries, right? Where it sort of, again, causes a very adverse reaction in their body. Sometimes they need antihistamines to be injected into their bodies. Those are allergies, right? And again, food allergies essentially impact the immune system. Now, antibodies are essentially, and the way that allergies work is, the immune system recognizes a component of a protein or a carbohydrate as something that's toxic, something that's attacking the immune system, and starts producing antibodies to sort of fight it, right? And so this is usually towards a protein or a carbohydrate component, and it could happen, again, as a result of prolonged exposure to the same kind of food, same brand, same type of food. Some components are slightly more genetic in nature. Some components have to do with the quality of protein or carbohydrate that the dog is also consuming. One of the big things with food allergies in dogs is that there is a host of other symptoms that support that food allergy, right? So you're going to see primarily a lot of skin issues. So itchy paws, eczema, hives. We call this as acute dermatitis. Patches of red skin, fur falling, gunky ears, extremely smelly, foul-smelling ears, very, very waxy ears. They could have swelling on different parts of their body. They could be extremely bloated. And it could also be accompanied with diarrhea and vomiting, right? But what you're seeing over here with food allergy is just a host of other symptoms apart from just having a poor digestive reaction, right? And one of the more common accompanying symptoms for food allergies is usually skin issues. And so a lot of the times we sort of, start addressing skin issues as dermatitis or fungal infections or bacterial infections, but we don't really look at the food, right? And a lot of the times it could be that the dog is consuming a food product either in the form of protein or a carbohydrate component that is causing these flare-ups to happen, right? Other symptoms could also include, weight loss, hyperactivity, reactivity, lack of energy, right? So if I'm constantly consuming food that's putting my immune system under a lot of stress and creating a situation where I'm constantly fighting, with what I think are toxins, then that is going to lead to a host of other behavioral issues as well. Okay. Right, so this here is a good example of what potentially an allergic reaction to something could look like. You're going to see redness around certain areas, potentially bald patches, loss of skin, discoloration on the skin. Usually you don't get a reaction like this if a dog is intolerant towards a food component. Like I said, an intolerance could potentially just result in a little bit of digestive distress, but with food allergies, it's just far more comprehensive, right? Because here's really where the immune system is getting affected. When we look at common food allergens, right? These are some of the common food allergens that exist that we know of that impact dogs. So you have corn, you have soy, you have meat proteins like chicken, lamb, beef, you have dairy, you have wheat gluten. And again, for different dogs, this works very, very differently, right? Corn and soy are quite predominant ingredients in dry food and in kibble. So a lot of the times your dog is consuming, if your dog is consuming kibble and there are components like these, it could flare up certain reactions. Meat proteins as well, like chicken, lamb, and beef, again, could cause a host of issues. And this again has to do with what is the food that these animals are being fed, right? If they're being fed poor quality food, then that is also getting consumed by them, and consequently our dogs are also consuming them. Dairy again could be intolerance, could also be significant allergy. We know that again dogs are intolerant of gluten, and so when we feed them aate ka roti or a lot of rice, etc., again some of the reactions could come as a result of that. And then again, you'll see that there's a whole spectrum where some dogs are just intolerant, but some dogs are just significantly allergic towards some of these components. One of the things that we recommend and a good nutritionist would recommend in a case of food allergy is actually something called an elimination diet. And this is really where we sort of very simply, we eliminate everything that the dog is eating currently and introduce proteins and carbohydrate sources that the dog has never consumed before, right? So we call these novel because it's new to the dog's system, right? And so it's a very, it's a comprehensive systematic process that sort of goes anywhere between 8 to 12 weeks, where we introduce 2 novel foods in the protein and carbohydrate food groups. So for example, if your dog has consumed a lot of chicken, then we eliminate chicken from the diet completely, and instead we might introduce another form of poultry in the form of turkey or duck or quail, something that your dog has never eaten. Oils don't contain protein or carbohydrates, and so the same oils can continue to be added, or fats can be added. And so we sort of do a diet where for the first 2 weeks, the dog is only eating these novel components, right? And we're seeing how the body and the system is reacting to this. And then we slowly and steadily, week by week, reintroduce some of the known foods, pause and resume depending on the reactions that we're seeing, right? What this helps us to do is really isolate what is that one particular food that's causing an issue like this, right? And so, for example, let's say for my dog, if I suspect that there is a little bit of an allergic reaction happening to chicken, what I'm going to do is for the first 2 weeks, potentially just feed my dog duck or turkey. And then in the 3rd week, I might introduce a chicken egg, and I might see whether some of the symptoms are coming back up, right? If the symptoms come back up, then I know it's something to do with chicken, and so I remove the chicken altogether from the diet. Then I try another known ingredient, right? And so this is a process of literally, it is what it is, right? It is an elimination process where we're eliminating potential food components that could cause allergies for our dogs, right? One of the biggest challenges with an elimination diet is that it is an extremely strict diet, right? Which means that during this time, you're stopping all other food and treats. You can't be giving your dogs some of the regular stuff that you would otherwise give them, because the whole point of the elimination diet is to narrow down on the food components that could be causing these reactions, right? And so if we're feeding just a normal diet, but also continuing to sort of add the fruits, add the biscuits, add the paneer, add the chapatis, which dogs should not eat, then it's not really an elimination diet. We're not able to sort of narrow down on what's going on, right? And so this is really a process that takes anywhere between 8 to 12 weeks. And by the end of that, we sort of create a list of foods that clearly don't work for your dog and then eliminate them altogether from the diet. So that's definitely one of the ways to approach it.
Samjhe? Here's what you need to do if you think your dog has a food allergy. Number 1, identify if your dog has a food allergy or a food intolerance. Number 2, अगर food allergy है, then you need to identify कि allergen क्या है. You can do that by following an elimination diet where you exclude ingredient by ingredient and then understand कि किस चीज़ से actually allergy हो रही है. Number 3, अगर आपने identify कर लिया allergen, then you basically just remove it from your dog's diet and replace it with a suitable nutrient instead of that. Simple. If you'd like to get answers to other dog nutrition questions like this, make sure you're downloading the Sploot app, जहाँ पे आपको मिलेगा content on everything from dog nutrition, behavior, health, etc., where you'll be able to talk to other dog parents and get their opinions, attend live webinars with experts like Surabhi from the video, and track your dog's medical records as well as exercise. Download now on iOS and Android. And if you want to watch more informational content like this, remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel.